Where else would you rather be? I'm Paul Clifford, CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association. Welcome to the people of Penn State. Each week on the podcast, you can expect to hear the voices of Penn Staters talking about what they're passionate about. And you can expect to feel the pride and the power of the Penn State Network. The People of Penn State podcast can be found on Apple Podcasts or your podcast app of choice. Go ahead and subscribe and give us a rating. Ratings and reviews are really the best way to have other Penn Staters find these great stories. Today, I'm delighted to have Anand Ganjam. He's a 2015 finance graduate of the Pennsylvania State University of the Meal College of Business. He is also the 83rd president of the Penn State Alumni Association and began his two-year term as president on July 1st of this year. At the age of 30, he is the youngest president in the association's history. Professionally, Anand is a strategy consultant, senior manager with Accenture, where he focuses on helping large organizations navigate change and develop talent. And as a student, he was involved in a number of student organizations and served as president of the University Park Undergraduate Association from 2014 to 2015. He has served on Alumni Council since 2014. He is passionate about travel, personal finance, and of course, all things Penn State. Please welcome Anand Ganjam into the People of Penn State podcast. Anand, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Paul. That was a very kind introduction, and I'm a huge fan of this podcast, so it's an honor to be a part of this.
So you're the one who listens.
Yeah, that's right. I am the one.
There we go. So for people who don't know you, Anand, how did you become a Penn State Nittany Lion?
Yeah, well, I unlike a lot of, I think, Penn Staters, I did not grow up with Penn State being a big part of my life, at least in my early years. My parents both immigrated from India in the late 80s, and they went to college in India. My older brother went to Carnegie Mellon University. So being a Penn Stater and thinking about college football, all of that wasn't a big part of my life. That said, I always like to talk about how Penn State was meant to be for me. The neighborhood where I grew up in and where my parents still live in York, Pennsylvania, is called Penn State Estates. And the playground in the summer, the park that is right down the street from my parents' house is called Nittany Park. So there's a connection there that I've always had, and maybe it was always meant to be. But I didn't really start to think about Penn State as an option for college until I was starting to actually look for college my senior year of high school. That's around that time when I started to realize I wanted to go to business school. And obviously, Smealedge College of Business is very highly regarded. And so I went on my first tour probably the end of my junior year of high school. And the first thing that stood out to me is the beautiful drive from York to University Park when you get on 322 and you see the water and the mountains. And that was so wonderful. And then having a great tour, visiting the business school, visiting the campus, I just fell in love. And after that, I applied, and I was fortunate enough to get accepted, and the rest is history. So that's how I became a Penn Stater. It
was destiny, Anand, growing up in Penn State Estates and playing at Nittany Park. There is nowhere else that you were going to end up. So
that's exactly right. Yeah.
And not too far from the Penn State York campus, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That's right. Actually, if I'm being really honest, my first interaction with Penn State was through a dual enrollment class that I took my junior year of high school at Penn State York. So I went there a few times for about a full semester, and then I only lived about 15 minutes from Penn State York. But then after that, went off to University Park.
Well, now you're just showing off. Talking about dual enrollment as a junior. Wow. As a student at Penn State, you were very involved in a number of organizations. Talk about some of the organizations that you were involved in.
Yeah, well, I got involved right away at Penn State. For me, when I reflect back on being a high schooler, I would characterize myself as someone who did a lot of different things, but didn't do anything particularly well. I played 2 instruments. I was on the tennis team. I was in a number of different student organizations and clubs, but wasn't always doing the activities with purpose. And so I wanted to almost reinvent myself when I came to Penn State and make sure I made the most of all 4 years and spent time doing activities I really enjoyed and giving my all to them. So when I came, the first thing I did was I wanted to get involved with the student government. being a part of the President's New Student Convocation, which is the big presentation for all new students that happens, I think, the Saturday before the fall semester, where all of the first year students get together at the Bryce Jordan Center and hear from the new president and other leaders, and as well as the student body president. Hearing the student body president speak at that event my freshman year really inspired me to get involved with the University Park Undergraduate Association, the student government there. So that was the activity that I spent a significant amount of time on for all 4 of my years. I was also very involved with the Smeal College of Business, specifically the Penn State Finance Society and the Smeal Student Council, Sapphire Leadership Program, a number of other activities. And then when you're a part of a student government, you get to be connected to a number of different parts of the university, and you get to sit on boards and faculty senate and Alumni Council, which is how I got plugged into the Alumni Association. So those were some of the major activities I was involved with.
Excellent. Go ahead and give a shout out to your UPUA assembly. What number?
Number 9.
The 9th assembly.
That's right.
So what were some of the experiences that you had with UPUA? And kind of just talk about some of the how those experiences outside the classroom help prepare you for what you're doing now today as a professional.
Yeah. Well, UPUA, I would say more than anything, especially being UPUA president my senior year, it's one of the best learning experiences that I've ever had. It's when you're UPUA, you have to figure out how to do a lot of different things at once. First and foremost, you are a student and you're trying to figure out how to navigate your 400 level classes. You are trying to make sure that you're getting all of the basics done and trying to apply for a job, all of those basic things. Then you have a number of other responsibilities. You sit on boards, you're managing an organization. You have a lot of institutional responsibilities, so to speak, that take up a bunch of time. And then and thirdly, you when you're in student government, you run on a platform of commitments to the student body. So you are trying to really get a series of experiences, activities completed to meet those promises. And as you know, Paul, there's a very active student news at Penn State, and they're always closely following the student government. So what it really taught me was how to be a self-starter, how to actually make sure that you see initiatives from start to finish, how you bring the right people along with you. You can't get a lot of things done at Penn State in a vacuum. You have to bring administrators along. You have to bring faculty along. You have to bring other student orgs around. So we spent a lot of time trying to collaborate with different groups to get things done. I learned a lot about executive presence and making your case and seeing initiatives from start to finish, being proactive. All of that really, really helped me in my career moving after Penn State as well. I think being in student government, especially in the time that I was there, which was between 2011 and 2015, was an especially interesting time with a lot of additional pressure that you may not have to experience otherwise. And we all know what happened in Penn State in 2011. And the students were really involved in demonstrating and representing what the university really stands for, and played a really big role in, I think, the recovery from 2011, whether that's making sure we had a seat at the board of trustees, making sure that we were involved in some of the strategic conversations the university was taking, being involved in the searches for the new presidents. So it was a really interesting time to be a student at Penn State, especially being in student government. And those are skills that I still use today in my career and very grateful for.
Absolutely. Anand, you mentioned that you came to Penn State already knowing that you wanted to be a business major. What was the initial career goal? Was it to work in consulting like you are now? Did you want to start your own business as an entrepreneur? Were you headed to Wall Street to work in finance? Kind of what was the original plan, and how and why did that change along the way?
Yeah, I'd say a little bit of all of the above, except I had no idea what consulting was at the time. I never even heard the term until maybe my junior or senior year of high school. When you're a finance student, I think there's a lot of traditional pathways, like you described, Paul, Wall Street, becoming an investor. A lot of folks go to work in corporate finance. A lot of folks go and work for the Big Four. I think what I realized as I started to take more and more of the 400 level finance classes, and I started to see my peers get really excited about life on Wall Street or life in finance, it felt more and more to me that that wasn't necessarily the career path for myself. What I knew I liked being involved in student organizations, being involved in UPUA was I loved problem solving. I loved doing a lot of different things at once, having a number of balls in the air, initiatives in the air. I liked working in teams. I liked presenting. So there was a whole range of activities that I liked, but I couldn't really nail it down to one typical finance field that I wanted to go to. So what happened was, as I was a rising senior at Penn State, I came across a former UPUA president who was an alum at the time. His name is Gavin Kierans. And Gavin, he was actually at Accenture. He had been at Accenture for a number of years, and he sort of opened my eyes to the world of consulting. He talked about how he worked across different industries to solve some of their more pressing business problems, how he was traveling and working with different clients, and how he was using a lot of his skills that he grew out of being UPUA president into the consulting world. And that just really fascinated me. I couldn't think of anything more I'd want to do than continue to use the skills and have the experiences I was having at Penn State in the real world in my career. So that's what opened my eyes to consulting. And then when I was a senior applying for jobs, I went after every consulting opportunity that I could. And it just, it worked out so well that Accenture ended up giving me an offer, and I've been there for 8 years now. So that was the journey.
That's great. Shout out to Gavin Kierans, friend of the Alumni Association. He's been a good volunteer for us, the founder of the Leadership AIG.
That's right.
Is also very active with the Mount Nittany Conservancy and serving Penn State. So good shout out for him. This is the People of Penn State. I'm Paul Clifford. Today I'm joined by Anand Ganjam. He's the 83rd president of the Penn State Alumni Association. So let's stick with Accenture for just another moment and talk about how your work there is focused on helping organizations navigate change, winning the hearts and minds of individuals, and doing things differently, right? I think when I think of change management, and we've gone through a lot of change here at the Penn State Alumni Association, some of it inspired by your leadership, it really is about hearts and minds and getting people to believe in the direction that we're going and get everybody kind of rowing in the same direction.
Yeah. Accenture's new tagline that they introduced a couple of years ago was "Let there be change." And I think a lot of that was driven by the pandemic. All organizations that didn't embrace change during the pandemic effectively no longer exist or are really struggling today. And you see that by the need to move into virtual work from home environments, the need to be a little bit more hybrid in the way they interact, the need to do different business differently. So change is extremely critical, and every business constantly has to go through change. It's that quintessential statement. The only thing that's constant is change. But what we try to do with Accenture, especially in the folks that focus on change management, part of our talent and organization practices, really try to help organizations and the individual level understand why an organization is going into change. Change is hard, right? It adds a lot of effort up front, especially if you're comfortable doing things for the way you've been doing for a very long time, or if you feel like what you're doing is working. But organizations at the whole and leadership, senior leadership, they realize that we need to constantly become more digital, for example, and use new tools and technologies. We need to think about how we interact with data differently. We need to constantly modernize our culture so that we're relevant in today's society. There's always a need to be pushing the needle forward and evolving and changing and becoming more modern. And some organizations are better at doing that than others. But what we found is that when organizations really invest time in bringing their people along the journey for change, always speaking to the why, always recognizing that there's going to be resistance up front, but we need to work through that and provide messages that are relevant to individuals at every level, not just senior leadership, but the day-to-day frontline worker, as to why we're changing and why this is good and what the benefit's going to be for the individual and the workforce. That's really, really important. And that's what I spend most of my time doing, right? How, like you said, how do we win the hearts and minds for everyday individuals within a workforce for change, whether that's new technology, whether that's operating differently, whether that's a new process. And it's been really exciting to see that come to life across industries, across different companies, across companies that work, have a more modern culture versus companies that have been around for a very long time. So that's some of the work that we do. And I think, to your point, it's really important.
Yeah, it's funny. If you would ask a room full of employees, right? How many of you think this organization needs to change? Everyone would raise their hand.
Right.
All right, second question. How many of you want to change? Right? Nobody in the room raises their hand. And so there's that acknowledgement that there's always room to improve, and yet fear that's around change. A lot of times in organizations, and look, I've done this in my career, and that the person who's most excited about the change is the one kind of initiating the change, and oftentimes that clouds their ability to see the team's concerns around why we're moving in a certain direction. So taking that beat and being intentional around painting the picture for the end state, and bringing people along the way, it's time well spent. It's either you'd spend your time either bringing people along or dealing with resistance, right? So how would you rather spend your time?
Yeah. And that notion of bringing people along, I think, is where a lot of change fails when we don't do that. When you ask the average person, okay, I want to bring a change management expert to help me with a project, the first thing they think is, okay, they're going to send a couple communications and they're maybe going to do a training session. They don't think about all of the other aspects of the work that go into change management. So then organizations will say, well, we'll just take 10% of a person and have them focus on the change. And once everything's ready, they'll send the communication and it's fine. But that's why it doesn't work. Really, when you're investing in change and focusing on bringing people along, it's on day one. Do we have all of the right leaders in the room collectively making the decision? Are they then bringing their people along into the journey? Are we starting the conversation about the change 3 months, 6 months in advance, so people feel like they have the time they need to become successful? Are we really infusing the change into our day-to-day operations and talking about it in a way where it's a more seamless transition rather than it's a big abrupt change on one day that you hear about 2 days before? So that piece around really bringing people along and making people feel like they're part of the journey and that their feedback is heard is what makes or break change. And that's what we really try to focus on.
So let's transition back to talking about Penn State, one of my favorite topics, one of your favorite topics. You have served Penn State throughout your time as a student, and that never really stopped because you immediately transitioned to Alumni Council. So let's start first with kind of, why do you choose to serve and give back to your alma mater?
I would say at its most fundamental reason is I've been asked. I've been given these opportunities to serve because of people like yourself or other leaders that I've had the chance to get exposed to. So I just feel really lucky in that regard. When I graduated from Penn State, I heard from your predecessor, Roger Williams, shout out to him, who asked if I'd be interested in serving on the Alumni Council for 3 years. And that was really exciting to me. I never thought that I would be so connected to Penn State and remain connected that way after graduation, after having been so involved. So I've been asked many times, and that's really important to me, that we sort of scale that to other Penn Staters too, because I know there's a lot of people out there that really would want to give their time and energy to Penn State because they love their experience, but maybe just don't have that opportunity. So for me, it's the fact that I've been asked, and now I want to be the one that's asking other individuals to come back and to, whether it's to serve Penn State or to be a part of the work that we do, be a part of the events, receive the benefits of the association. That's what I'm really excited to continue to do. But I'm just grateful for the individuals who time and time again have put me in this kind of position to be involved.
Well, not only have you been asked and put into this position, but you also made a conscious decision to then pursue leadership opportunities and ultimately decided to throw your hat in the ring to become president of the Alumni Association, which now you are currently in that role. What is your vision for the role as president, and what are you most excited about?
Yeah. Well, becoming president of the Alumni Association, I think first and foremost is an unbelievable honor. It's something that it's hard to articulate, right? How much it actually means to me to be in this role. But on the other hand, it's a bit of a catch-22, right? On one hand, the Penn State Alumni Association is the greatest alumni association in the world, the largest dues-paying alumni association in the world. It offers unparalleled opportunities. I don't think any other alumni association does what Penn State does. So coming in to be the president of something that's already so great is wonderful. This is not some sort of disaster recovery situation, right, or a turnaround that we're trying to put in place. I, as president, and my predecessors have been set up for success, which is wonderful. On the other hand, you now have this pressure of, okay, what's the legacy that you're going to leave on the greatest thing that already exists in place? It's kind of like nobody wants to be the next head coach of Alabama football, right? That's the tough analogy. Some people might be mad for making that one, but that's sort of the feeling for me coming into this place. I've been thinking about what is it that what's the next step for the association. But what I've realized as I've reflected on my many years in the Alumni Association and the Alumni Council is every year and every meeting that I'm in, every conversation I have, I learn something new about how wonderful this association is. I learned something new about an alum that we helped place in a job, or an alum who took advantage of a discount that's helping them, in their day-to-day life, or an alum who was paired with a student and mentored them. I just learned something new about all of the different wonderful things that the Alumni Association offers. So for me, it's natural for anyone to want to be involved with the Alumni Association. And I talk to some other alums maybe who are not involved, and they ask, "Oh, why would you join the association?" And I'm like, what do you mean? Why would you join the association? But then I realize I've had the benefit of 10 years on Alumni Council. I've had the benefit of being exposed to all of the great things the association does in a way that most alums have not. So for me, I really think it's important to help Penn Staters understand and unlock the power of the association, unlock the power of Penn State, so to speak. The thing that makes Penn State as a university so special to me is I don't think any other institution invests in making sure that the experience that their alums have with their institution is a lifelong experience. When we say lifelong Lions, we really mean it, right? No other university has the dedicated time, staff, and resources focused on keeping Penn Staters engaged over the course of their life. And so for me, I think the Alumni Association is the key to unlocking the return on investment from Penn State, that return on investment from your degree over the course of your entire life. And I really have a big focus on just helping Penn Staters realize the impact that the association can have on them as an individual, on their family, on their community, back to the institution as a whole, is really the key of what my focus is. I think it's a really wonderful place. And the more that we can educate and activate our volunteers around the story that we have here, I think the more members that we will get and the more people we'll bring in. So I couldn't be more excited about these next 2 years, Paul.
I hope you're seeing these pictures that we're scrolling up on the screen there. A picture of us out at the Rose Bowl at our service project that's now become an annual Penn State tradition, and a lot of good times along the way there.
That's right. That's a shout out to Ty Cole over here and doing the food drive back in the Rose Bowl. That was a great time, and another example of how whenever we show up, we try to give back to the community too. And I love going out to the football games and meeting the local chapters, and the Rose Bowl was a great example of that too.
So I want to talk about a couple passions that you have. One that I know started when you were a student here and has now extended into your time as alumni, and in particular when you were UPUA president. The passion for financial wellness and involvement in facilitating financial literacy sessions. I know that was something you were interested in as a student and now has been part of your service back to Penn State. So why financial wellness and financial literacy?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think one of the things I realized when I was a student was that I was very, very lucky. My parents covered my college education. I didn't graduate with debt. I didn't have to worry about working while I was a student, which is definitely a reason I was able to be involved and able to feel comfortable over the course of my 4 years at Penn State. Also being a finance student, right? I was sort of very interested in a lot of these topics. And I realized that we weren't really in the classroom teaching a lot of personal finance courses. And as I started to have conversations with my peers, many of them weren't familiar with some of the fundamental personal finance aspects. What's the difference between a debit card and a credit card? What's an emergency fund? How much should I have in my checking or savings account? And with the combination of how expensive college is and the debt that you incur after graduation, with the lack of knowledge, it just felt like there was a really big gap in a resource that students needed. And so at the time when I was a student, the university had just hired a financial literacy coordinator. Her name is Dr. Dodd Risk, who's still a wonderful friend and mentor to me. But it just worked out very well, where as I was starting to gain an interest in this area, Dr. Risk was hired too. And so we came together with the university libraries and started to talk about, is there a way for us to really make personal finance and financial wellness a core component of what the university does, short of offering dedicated courses to it. And it was really neat. And doing the research that we had done, found that the best way to educate individuals on personal finance is through peers, peer-to-peer coaching. So other universities had a concept where they would educate students, whether they studied finance or just had an interest in the topic, to become peer educators. Sort of like our career services centers has student interns that are helping younger students go through the resume prep or interview prep. Personal finance is a concept that we could replicate. So we started to explore that, and it was a really great experience for me for my entirety of my junior year and my senior year, helping to stand up this program. And now, even in the workforce, I've realized it continues to be incredibly important for folks to understand, okay, now you might have a paycheck. What are you going to do with that money? How do you make sure that you're planning for all of your expenses that you have? How are you budgeting? Are you investing? It's a topic that 2 out of 3 Americans couldn't pass a basic personal finance test. It's one of the biggest drivers of stress. It's actually, I think, the biggest driver of divorce in the country. So there's so many statistics out there about how personal finance has a really big impact on your life, positively and negatively, depending on where your literacy is. And having conversations and creating spaces for people to feel comfortable talking about it's always made a huge impact, individuals, collectively, and it's something that I've learned a lot from, and I've really enjoyed. So that's a bit about that.
So another passion that you have, we touched on this just a little bit, but you have a passion for travel. You've traveled all over the world. You've now made a commitment over the last few years to travel to away Penn State football games, which we showed the picture for the Rose Bowl. But talk about your passion for travel.
Yeah, I benefit from having, parents that are very well traveled, and they lived in India for quite some time. So just making the move to living in a different country. My brother and sister-in-law are big travelers as well. So traveling has always been something compelling to me, but I really didn't start to do too much of it until maybe after the pandemic. Really, me and a group of good friends started to make goals of traveling to different locations, different states. I share a goal with 2 of my very good friends to get to all 50 states. And we all know Mike McHugh, current council member and really incredible traveler. He's a very good friend of mine who has been to over 100 countries and 7 different continents, and does that while having a physical disability. So having the opportunity to travel with him and see the world through his eyes has been a huge inspiration for me. And, a group of us have been out to a number of different states together. We try to get out to a lot of the games, but we've also traveled the world. Last year, we went to Turkey and Croatia. Earlier this year, I had the chance to go to India and Japan. The world is a very special place. It's very big, and there's so many different things to experience here. So I don't know if I'll ever get to the 100 countries and 7 continents, but I hope to get somewhere close to that. I do hope to hit all 50 states at some point. And college football definitely helps with that. It gets you to some of the more obscure states every now and then. So travel is awesome, and encourage everyone to do it. I'm also very excited, Paul, to be a part of the alumni travel tours. I know the Alumni Association puts together. I haven't had a chance to go on one of those, but I'm excited to do that in the next 2 years.
Oh, we will get you on one of those.
Yes.
Really soon here. Yeah, and I don't think our friends in Nebraska appreciate being called obscure. So apologies to Nebraska, although you haven't been there for a football.
I haven't been to Nebraska. I'm actually more referencing the Mitten State that I know that you don't like to speak about, as well as Iowa. And we're hopefully we'll get some revenge on Iowa this year.
Absolutely. You've had a really strong connection to our Fast Start mentoring program. You've had a great experience with your mentee now over the past 3 years. Talk a little bit about the Fast Start program and why you're so enthusiastic about it.
Yeah, I was paired up with my first mentee as part of the Fast Start program in 2020. And for those who don't know, the Fast Start program is a wonderful opportunity that the Alumni Association pulls together that matches alums with underrepresented first-year students who may need some extra support in navigating college for any number of reasons. So in 2020, I was matched up with this wonderful student. Her name is Christine Crosman. She's a liberal arts student. And I remember getting on our first call together in 2020, and she was, taking all of Penn State in from her bedroom. So for her, it was really hard to, I think, understand. She also didn't have parents that went to Penn State. This was totally new for her. She's the oldest sibling. And so she was trying to figure out, well, what is Penn State all about? All these people are rah-rah Penn State, but I just don't get it. And I'm also stressed because I'm trying to figure out my classes and don't have a lot of connections here. And it was really wonderful to meet with her. I would meet with her every couple of weeks, every month now, and talk through everything from, all right, what are ways for you to think about your classes for the next year? What are some student groups that you might find interesting? How can we help you build relationships despite being in the pandemic and not being able to meet people in person? That was really great. And frankly, I probably learned more from her than she learned from me. I learned so much about the challenges of the student experience during that time and what's relevant today for students. So that was really inspiring for me to be a part of. And then one of my favorite moments was once the pandemic started, calming down a little bit, and her whole family came to campus and went on their first tour of University Park. And this was leading up into her second year, but her first year was completely remote. So being able to show them what Penn State was all about and the really cool resources that they have, the buildings, we all went and got creamery ice cream and we ate at the corner room. And that was really special for me too, to show the whole family what it's about. They were so excited, and her aunt was there too, doing the "We Are" chant. So it was really cool. And we continue to stay in touch. And now she's, taking on leadership roles and is making such a big impact and is comfortable with Penn State. So that was a program that I really care about. I'm excited to have another mentee this year. And I think being a mentor, you can really make or break someone's experience, especially for students who may not be as connected to Penn State when they start here, or may not have a natural network or know what they're looking for in college. It makes a big difference. So that's why I love this program.
This is the People of Penn State. I'm Paul Clifford. I'm joined by Anand Ganjam. He's the 83rd president of the Penn State Alumni Association. So, Anand, I know you're a longtime listener of the podcast, and we like to have a little bit of fun at the end of each episode. And so I'm going to throw some quick hitter questions at you. You've already alluded to liking to going to the creamery, so heads up that there's a question there related to that. But first and foremost, your favorite class at Penn State?
Yeah, my favorite class was AYFCE 270. Very long name, but it was a personal finance and financial wellness course that was taught by Dr. Kathy Bowen, who was a sponsor for some of our personal finance activities. But that course taught me how to make my own personal budget that I still use today. And it taught me a lot about just general consumer skills. So love that class.
That's great. You mentioned your passion for travel. Favorite place you've ever visited?
Oh, that's a tough one, Paul. I would say the coolest place I've ever been to was probably Cappadocia in Turkey. It is a small city outside of Istanbul. It is a beautiful opportunity. If you do hot air balloons, and if you're into that, it's the best place ever to do a sunrise hot air balloon. Again, a lot of people get engaged there too, funny enough. So really amazing place.
So you are a guy that has a lot of ideas. What's your best idea that is yet to be implemented?
I think you're teasing me for this one, Paul, because I know you want me to say this, but I really believe that the creamery should have an ice cream truck. I don't know who's going to sponsor it. I don't know if that's the Alumni Association, Paul. Maybe it's athletics. Who knows, right? But wouldn't it be really special if you had the creamery ice cream and ice cream truck going across the campuses, driven by the Nittany Lion, or maybe even driven by the CEO of the Alumni Association, Paul Clifford. But that is my idea. I've had that since I was a student, and I hope it comes to fruition one day.
Well, fun fact, the Nittany Lion doesn't have a driver's license.
That's interesting. But the person under it hopefully does.
I don't know what you're referring to. If you could have dinner with anyone, who would it be and why?
I'm going to pick a very stereotypical Penn State answer on this one to hopefully nobody's surprise. But I'm really fascinated by Evan Pugh. I hope this was a dead or alive question. Evan
It
Pugh
is, yes.
was the founder of Penn State, and he was 31 years old when he actually took on the office of president of the university. So when he was like actually in the meat of creating Penn State University and lobbying the government right in the middle of the Civil War, he was in his late 20s. He was younger than I am right now. And he was the person that is the reason why Penn State University exists in the first place. And unfortunately, he passed away at a young age. I think he was in his mid 30s. Who knows what he would have achieved had he lived longer. But Evan Pugh has always fascinated me and inspired me. So that would be my answer.
That's a great answer. He passed away, I believe, from complications after a carriage accident, and
That's
having been camping with some students. And yes, interestingly enough, Evan Pugh's gravesite is actually here in Center County still. It's in the Bellefonte Union Cemetery. So Penn Staters who are really passionate about the institution can take a pilgrimage over there and check out where Evan and Valentine Pugh are buried.
Well, I now have my next bucket list item for Penn State.
How about your most unusual We Are experience? Maybe a unexpected place where you heard someone yell it to you or you yell it out to somebody else?
Yeah. So in 2018, a group of friends and I traveled to South Africa. We went to Johannesburg and we went to Cape Town. And as part of the part of Cape Town, we hiked up Table Mountain, which is one of the big mountains and popular tourist attractions in Cape Town. But I remember as we were getting ready to go on the hike, it was probably me, one of us, but I think it's me, had a bunch of Penn State gear on as always. And as we were about to get on the hike, I just heard someone say, "We are." And it turns out it was a Penn State professor and her family coming down the mountain, and we had a quick exchange, and that was really cool. So I'll never forget that moment.
How about your favorite Penn State sport?
It's got to be Penn State football. Huge fan. I think not a day goes by without me looking up Penn State football in the news. So
now you've also been known to text or tweet basketball school from time to time. So
yes, we're getting there. I have no doubt that we will get there. But when I am a little bit upset about a football outcome, I tend to make up for it by reminding ourselves that we are a basketball school.
And finally, your favorite flavor of creamery ice cream?
For the audience, I was giving Paul a tough time about this question before because I never know what to say. I'm a horrible Penn Stater in this regard. I think anytime I've been asked this question, it's a different answer. But today's answer is going to be WPSU coffee break. I've been in a coffee mood lately, and I do like coffee flavored ice cream, and that is the one that I got last time I was there.
Anand, thank you for allowing us to tell your story on the People of Penn State podcast. It's alumni like you who allow us to share your story that brings glory back to Penn State. And so thank you for all that you do for the university. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Paul. It's great to be here with you. I appreciate it.
And I want to thank our producer, Vincent Longaro, for everything he's doing behind the scenes to make everything run so smoothly here on the People of Penn State. Again, if you like this episode, I hope that you'll subscribe to the People of Penn State podcast in your podcast app of choice. While you're there, give us a rating, drop us a review. All of that helps drive people to find these great stories that we tell here every episode on the People of Penn State. If you're a member of the Alumni Association, thank you for your support. If you're not a member yet, what are you waiting for? Go to our website at alumni.psu.edu, and you too can become a member of the world's largest alumni association. Thank you for all you do for the university, for the glory, and for the future. We are